Okay, we're here in Florida. What's happening February 24th through the 27th, 2022, Schlapp?
We're going to have a big nationwide CPAC once again in Orlando, Florida. Just like last year when they canceled us in the swamp, we've decided we're going to make sure that no one cancels us, including Brandon. And there's TW Shannon. How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm TW. I am Matt and Mercedes' brother from another mother.
And you're from the wrong state, too, but that's okay.
It's all right. Everybody loves Florida.
Yeah, but you're going to be at CPAC, right?
Absolutely. The greater the freedom, the greater the wealth.
All right, so tell these people they got to go this next year.
You got to be at CPAC. February 24th is the date. You don't want to miss it. All conservatives from around the country will be there, and you need to be there, too.
And go to conservative.org to register.
And follow us on social media. You might be offended sometimes, but you'll be okay.
Welcome back to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. And yes, we are counting down the days to CPAC. Remember, February 24th through the 27th in CPAC, Orlando, Florida. Don't forget to register at conservative.org. Matt Schlapp is not with me, but I do have the other Matt. Matt Whitaker, former Attorney General and Senior Fellow at ACU Foundation. Matt, it's great to have you.
Mercy, I have been looking forward to this for a while.
I hope so, because I feel like Schlapp and I, our schedules are not, it's not working.
I'll fill in any time.
Okay, so I had Larry last week, and then now I was like, I got to get Whitaker on. But I also want, we have so much to talk about because there's so much in the news. Mm-hmm. But I want to start off with what our senior producer, Regina Bratton, she was out in the grocery stores, empty shelves. I want you all to look at this video. No milk, no eggs, very little meat. Let's watch the video real quick.
Want milk? Forget about it. There is no milk. No milk anywhere.
What's going on?
Well, first of all, we got to make sure this isn't Obama's. Have you seen the price of arugula lately? This is like legitimately milk, eggs, basic thing, chicken parts. All the kind of things that like ordinary Americans eat. And my experience is the same as hers. Not only is inventory limited, prices are sky high, and it's all because of Joe Biden and his administration's policies.
Yeah, I want to dig into this because I do think that it's partly, it was several months ago, the president talked about how he's going to solve this supply chain crisis. We had Buttigieg, who, he was on paternity leave for a really long time. Let me explain something to you. Matt Schlapp was never, ever on paternity leave. I didn't want him in the house. I wanted him out of the house when we were mass producing children. But here's the deal. This is very problematic when you have still the supply chain crisis not solved, despite the minor changes that they made. And on top of that, you've got between COVID and the truckers are not being able to move the products. This is causing an enormous amount of stress on the American people.
It really is. And this is ordinary Americans, like from the real places in this country. That are seeing this with their own eyes, and Biden will not take responsibility, nor will anybody in his administration. All they do is blame others for their failed policies.
Right.
And it's let's be honest, it's the liberals in Congress as well that just don't get it. That somehow they think that if you disincentivize the producers,
right.
I feel like I'm reading Fountainhead in real life to some extent.
Yeah.
This is kind of a classic Ayn Rand story, but it's it's playing out, unfortunately, to your point, and it's hurting real Americans.
So it's interesting. One of the big economic news today was that inflation rises 7% over the past year, highest since 1982. Okay, and remember, they said that this was going to be transitory. This inflation thing not going to last long. Obviously, that's not the case. What does inflation mean for everyday Americans? They said, the wages are higher, but then we've got inflation. It's all eating into the wages. How are Americans' families supposed to survive in this environment?
Tax. Yeah, it's an invisible tax on the American people. And it's not because, as President Biden alleges, that cattle producers are greedy. This is all based on that input costs are increasing, that the cost of doing business is increasing, whether it's healthcare expenses, insurance, all the kind of input costs that businesses face, and they can't eat that. I mean, they,
Right.
it's not, they're designed to make a small profit margin, and obviously they have to pass on their increased costs on to consumers.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and it was interesting because Senator Joe Manchin, he mentioned that this is on inflation. It's very dangerous. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to give him too much credit because I still think he's going to cave on
He voted to impeach President Trump twice,
exactly.
by the way.
But he did say that he wasn't going to support Build Back Better because this is being one of the reasons is inflation, which is why are we going to keep the government in this spending spree? This is not going to solve the problem. Now, I always think he's going to cut the deal with the Democrats. Yeah. But, I do think that it has stalled. Build Back Better has stalled. But still, you're talking about massive government spending that we've seen with money still not being spent on COVID relief.
And remember, it used to be probably 6 to 8 years ago where the United States would sell bonds to raise money because they weren't getting enough tax revenue, sell bonds, and the Chinese or foreign investors would buy it. Now, almost the sole buyer of American bonds is the Federal Reserve.
Wow.
They are monetizing the debt, and that is one of the reasons you see there's a lot more money supply out there, and so therefore, it costs more dollars to buy hard goods, like all the kind of things we're talking about.
So, midterm elections coming up this year. This is going to be, I think, the issue. It will be the kitchen table issues. It will be the economy. It will be inflation. What do the Democrats have to sell?
They don't. You saw a week ago what they have to sell, which is a completely fabricated, news story that they are going, again, a day that will live in infamy, like D-Day and like Pearl Harbor. It's the American people don't care if their costs of milk and eggs and chicken and and bread and all the kind of things that they need to feed their family and housing. I mean, everything is going up, and we're reaching a point where if it continues to increase, that people are going to have to make increasingly hard decisions because the labor market is going to start to stall. And, we should have expected this out of President Biden. This is exactly what he promised us. And at the same time, it was all about Orange Man bad. And, we want calm and we want, sort of steady hand. And we got exactly the opposite. We got even more chaos than we ever had, for the 4 years of President
So you bring
Trump.
up a great point. The obsession with January 6th, we saw this all play out with the dramatic videos from Kamala Harris's speech to the President Biden speech. And then you have Chuck Schumer basically using January 6th and saying this was an assault on democracy, therefore, ... let's change the filibuster rules. Let's completely redo our voting system. And we saw Joe Biden just yesterday in Atlanta, Georgia, talking about this voting rights, quote unquote, law. Let's take a listen.
But as an institutionalist, I believe that the threat to our democracy is so grave that we must find a way to pass these voting rights bills. Debate them, vote, let the majority prevail. And if that bare minimum is blocked, we have no option but to change the Senate rules, including getting rid of the filibuster for this.
What the heck is he talking about?
If we had legitimate press in the White House, that would be the first question that they would need to get an answer to, because that is concerning. The President of the United States saying that we have domestic enemies, that constitutionally he needs to protect the American people against. I think he means us. I really do. I think he means conservatives. I think he means Republicans. I think he means freedom-loving patriots that understand that this is a very tenuous situation we find ourselves in the course of American history, and that we all, we need, as you've heard me say before, we need more statesmen and stateswomen that stand up and do what's in the best interests of America and in this country. Right. And we just don't see that out of President Biden.
Well, and there are like violent extremists, but then there's which obviously, if they're criminals, they're criminals, and you target those. That's one thing. It's different if you have a dissenting opinion. And what's happening is that the far left is basically saying, you have a dissenting opinion, or the big tech, and then they try to shut you down completely in every single way.
Merrick Garland has said priorities of the Department of Justice, parents at school board meetings, airline passengers.
Right.
Instead of actually caring about the things law enforcement wise, real threats, real challenges, again, as having done this, I worry about our true enemies, our foreign terrorists, non-state sponsored terrorists that can project power beyond their, their capabilities. And I just, I think if we're not diligent, we're in for big challenges.
Concern with Iran and China and Russia, to say the least. I do want to get one more quick reaction from his speech, Biden's speech yesterday on the voting rights. Obviously, this is their big push right now. Change the filibuster rules. How much is this an attack on democracy?
Well, the Constitution provides that the states control the elections. And this would completely take the Constitution in really, I would argue, an unconstitutional direction, which is to federalize this. And this is not voting rights. Let's be honest. This is not voting rights. I think about the new COVID restrictions that are going in place in D.C. And you have to have a vaccine card and a government issued ID. And that's more than what the Democrats in the Senate, I guess, want for people to cast the most important really thing they can do in their life, and that's a vote.
Right.
I mean, vote and raise children are like the two most important things you could possibly do as a citizen.
That's a good point, and deal with your spouse would be my other one. But, and pray. We have to pray a lot. Yeah. Okay, Matt Whitaker staying with us. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Schlapp with CPAC, and it's my privilege to tell you that we've got a very important project that we've just announced, the First Amendment Fund. It's a brand new fund that we've created through our criminal justice reform efforts to raise money to take care of you, Americans who are being canceled and desecrated out there around the country. We know it just happened in Virginia, where parents were called domestic terrorists by the Biden administration, where people who just want to express their political views are canceled left and right. Now we have this terrible specter of a vaccine mandate where you can lose your job or be prevented from going to a restaurant or go to school according to your vaccination status. These are all the things that are happening in this country that are making people realize that America is in a fight to defend the principles that have made her great. If you want to be involved in this important effort, please go to conservative.org, click the link for the First Amendment Fund. Please donate to this C3 to help these victims across the country, including those who are just involved in politics, to make sure they have the legal representation they need to be able to live their great American life.
We are back at CPAC Now, America Uncanceled, with my new co-host, because we can't find Matt Schlapp anywhere. I think he's somewhere in North Carolina. Matt Whitaker. You know, that Matt Whitaker show, we hit 1 million views with it. You are one popular guy. Well, who would have known?
These are my people.
These are my people.
The people that go to CPAC, the people that support the American Conservative Union. I mean, literally, these are the bread and butter of the heartland and of the places that I spend most of my time.
So I was catching up with Matt about what team he supported: University of Georgia, University of Alabama for the championship, and
I was kind of cheering for Georgia. Yeah, I mean, so I just met Jason Aldean over New Year's.
Yeah. How is he?
So he's doing well. He's a really nice guy. As someone once said when they met me, I thought you'd be taller, but he's not a super tall guy.
Well, I mean, you're like a former football player.
I know, but he was a great guy. His wife Brittany was there. Very nice couple. He performed on New Year's Eve at Mar-a-Lago, and we had a good time.
So let me ask you: you were a former football player in college.
Yes, I played at the University of Iowa.
Did you love it, or like what did you play?
I like to say it was as a tight end, and I like to say it was a great way to pay for school. I mean, they paid for my undergrad, my MBA, and my law degree, and so it was. I had a good time.
What did it teach you?
I mean, all the things that you would expect. It taught me discipline, perseverance. Picking yourself when you get knocked down, both literally and figuratively, And I just think and then balancing, both two full-time jobs, because you're a full-time student and you're a full-time athlete, and so those, and it also taught me how to eat too much. That's one of the challenges I'm still dealing with right now.
That's a good point. Remember, you're not 20 anymore. Okay, but I want to get back to some of the news items that we're seeing. We were talking about all this domestic terrorism, this focus that the Department of Justice has on it. In fact, the Justice Department is planning to form this special domestic terrorism unit. I mean, they are taking it 10 steps even further. So let's just play this video from the committee hearing from Assistant Attorney General Matthew Olson.
I've decided to establish a domestic terrorism unit to augment our existing approach. This group of dedicated attorneys will focus on the domestic terrorism threat. Okay, Matt, you were Attorney General. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know, this is a factoid, I would say. You call the Attorney General General. Did you all know that? I didn't know that. So do I call you General?
It happens from time to time. No, you can just call me whatever you want to call me. This is concerning, Marcy, right. And I really I think right now the federal government, under the management and control of Democrats, liberals, President Biden and his cronies, has the American people in their sights, and they, this is the first step. I mean, this makes me think of like the Alien Sedition Acts that President Adams had passed, where he kind of wanted to quell dissent and to reduce criticism of his disastrous presidency. Right. And I see Joe Biden is that they're going to start targeting American citizens that disagree with them. And I think the power of the Department of Justice, we've seen this so many times. We saw this, with Jim Comey and the FBI. Mm-hmm. Whenever they start to focus on this issue, and listen, I want to be clear: political violence is never acceptable. Right. Those are crimes; they should be prosecuted. But when we start forming domestic terrorism units, collecting intelligence on American citizens, using all the law enforcement powers of the Department of Justice, I just, quite frankly, I don't trust Merrick Garland and the people that he has at the Department of Justice to handle this appropriately and to strike the right balance. Because I've been in that chair. I know how hard it is to do that job on an ongoing and consistent basis, because I saw all the mistakes that were being made during that time. So how would you handle, and how did you all handle it when it was dealing with any sorts of terrorist threats in the United States? Yeah, well, so much of it is if you think about how the Department of Justice is deployed, it's deployed not only worldwide, but certainly, we have field offices, both of prosecutors and of investigators, the ATF, FBI, DEA, they're all deployed forward out in the field. And so that's good. And so and any time that investigations were being centrally managed, that's where you started to see these mistakes being made, where the people in Washington D.C. were directing traffic and directing investigations. But I really think as long as we can trust the FBI field agents and that they have clear direction as to what domestic terrorism is because it's not political dissent. And that's where I think Democrats get it wrong. I think that's where the Biden administration is getting it wrong. And so, I'm going to be watching this very carefully. I think you're right. And it's not the Loudoun County parents who, stood up and protest at a school board meeting, which is one of their angles that they try to go. But that's what Merrick Garland said, and that's a priority. And they also said, airline passengers are a priority for prosecution. And they never rescinded their memo. No. The Department of Justice, the memo that they talked about the parents being domestic. And news just came out that was actually, originated from the Secretary of Education who requested this letter be sent. It's these people. I know. We need to take like a chill pill because I think my blood pressure goes up every single day. But I want to shift gears here a little bit with the Biden administration planning these lists of employees seeking religious vaccine exemptions, okay? This is coming after we're waiting to see what's going to happen with the Supreme Court. They had the hearings last week on the vaccine mandate. But are we serious? They're going to actually keep a list of people who have asked for religious exemptions? I mean, they're not even giving the military religious exemptions on the vaccine. Right. Where does this vaccine mandate debate end? Well, it's going to end with the Supreme Court, and I think the Supreme Court's going to be very clear about what can and can't be done in this area. But this, again, anytime there's a database, and especially of religious believers, we should all be concerned. I mean, clearly that is, that there's a desire, a desire to have to treat unvaccinated as second-class citizens, people that either have natural immunities, have had it already, and have antibodies, people that, again, we have seen, I mean, I don't, it's an individual's choice. But the government should not be tracking. I mean, this violates the First Amendment, a freedom of association, freedom to worship, all the kind of things that the First Amendment was there put in place for. And I just don't think ultimately this database is going to be successful.
What's interesting to me is that the military, I don't think, is even accepting religious exemptions, which is just so odd to me that they wouldn't do that. I mean, where does this all end?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens to people going out to dinner on Saturday night in Washington, D.C., whether these restaurants offer a religious exemption form to sign. I think so.
Well. They did mention that they will allow medical and religious exemptions to the vaccine mandates. Of course, you don't hear that, or she doesn't put it up on her Twitter feed. She puts up, make sure you take your vaccine card if you're over the age of 12. Have we seen these types of mandates ever take hold here in the United States before?
Not like this. Not like this. I mean, this is a bit of a brave new world, and I think the Supreme Court's opinion is going to be so important. And I was probably like you, waiting over the weekend and planning to, talk about it, whatever they ruled. But obviously they're delayed, and I just don't know. I don't know if John Roberts is putting his thumb on the scale, trying to moderate some of the more conservative folks on the bench or not. But
I was actually surprised that Justice Sonia Sotomayor got it so many facts wrong. Like, you would think as a justice, you're sitting there, you have all your facts in place, and she's saying, hundreds of thousands of children are on ventilators. Like, where are they getting this information?
Well, the Supreme Court's a little different. It's not like you have a huge staff that prepares you for these things, but they have law clerks, and they have people doing research for them. And she said it with such great authority that she clearly believed it. Yes. And that's concerning that she would be that far off on what's happening. Mm-hmm. But again, I think to some extent for the left and for liberals, this COVID fear is turned into a religion. The COVID narrative is something that they have all subscribed to, that they believe is the next horrible thing. I mean, the concerning thing for me, among a lot of concerns, is when the people that should have the data can't say how many people died with COVID or of COVID.
That's right.
I mean, that is really concerning. It
was changing the preposition. I'm like, how do you go from, what was it, from to, it was like, I just was shocked at how.
But I will tell you one thing that's very interesting. I'm going to try to get this person on, my new show that I'm going to start.
Wait a second. You have a new show that you haven't talked to me about?
But
Whitaker's got a new show, people, but I don't know anything about it yet.
The million people that watch this, don't tell anybody.
No, we will help. We will help
put that
promote
out.
it.
We'll get that out when it's ready.
Okay.
But I talked to a person that is high up in the insurance business, and what he told me, and I got to verify this data because it's always dangerous, but he said it's verified, is that the insurance rates have not changed at all post-COVID. Right. And so the underwriting and all the kind of things, so COVID has not affected mortality over the long term. Okay. So that's a very interesting, which means that maybe it is more people dying with COVID than of COVID. But again, we'll get all this data, and I'm going to present this because I think this is an interesting piece because insurance companies don't screw around with mortality charts.
No, not at all. I want to talk about a political thing here. So Hillary Clinton, do you know there's talk again she's going to run? Have you heard? For 2024, they're bringing her back. There's conversations. I mean, what do you think the Biden camp is thinking right now?
Well, I don't think Joe Biden
has a clue.
Well, not only doesn't have a clue, he has no political power. Right. He was put in there because they had to stop Bernie Sanders, and he was not their choice, but he was the safe generic Democrat that they were able to put up there. They kept him locked literally in a basement. Yes. And kept him from saying anything of substance. And I look at this as I fully expect Hillary Clinton will run in 2024. There's nothing that she wants more or more desperately than to be president of the United States. She looks at, she had utter disdain for Donald Trump,
right?
Although she attended his wedding. She has, she has a lot of contempt, and she knows Joe Biden well, and that she does not respect him.
But she's not likable, Matt. I mean, this is the biggest issue she had back in 2016.
She's not likable, but she is very powerful when it comes to the left and the donors and everyone else. Certainly she has a base. She has a base of power, and that base is consequential in the Democrat primary. So it would be very interesting to see.
It would be a cat fight between Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton. That would be something fun to watch.
I'm not a big fan of Kamala Harris. I think what I've observed about her is, she's too cautious of a politician. I think she needs to and does not stand for anything.
Yes.
As a former attorney general, there are some things that she could be speaking out against. Human trafficking is one of the primary things that she should.
And it's a bipartisan issue.
It is a bipartisan issue. She knows it well. She has traveled to the border as Attorney General of California. I think my understanding is she's even been to Mexico and gone and seen some of these trafficking
organizations. Now she's scared of going to the border. She's like, I can't even go over there.
But she's scared of everything, and you can't. You can't curate this perfect image because you end up just being completely vapid, like you see out of her. Cautious, unwilling to stand up and stand for something. And I think Americans, if nothing else, want people that fight for their interests. And you're just not seeing that right now out of the Biden-Harris administration.
I love it. Not only is he like an economist, but he's also a former attorney general, and now I think a therapist, like a psychologist. Like he's actually like psychoanalyzing. Totally. Anyways, I do want to say Matt Whitaker has been a champion in helping so many people who literally had very little to do with January 6th and helping President Trump get the event together, which was a peaceful event where the president spoke, and they're going after these young kids dragged in with subpoenas into this committee. And really, you've really been so helpful in just getting them, and understand just with legal counsel. And I think that's been so helpful. So we want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you. It's again, we all had to jump in and do the right thing. And I think so much of what we're seeing out of Congress under Nancy Pelosi is completely partisan. This committee, special committee, select committee, whatever it is, I think is probably illegally constituted. Liz Cheney is not the ranking member, and it's they should have Minority Leader McCarthy's appointees on it. And I just we've been working very hard, representing a lot of clients, and I think we've had some good results on their behalf.
Well, we thank you for doing that, because Republicans sometimes cut and run, and that's not what we're going to do. And it's one of the reasons why here at ACU we established the First Amendment Fund to help pay for these legal bills. It's a lot, it's costly, and you're giving so much of your time to help get these kids through this process. But it's scary. It's scary for these kids to be subpoenaed and have to deal with these individuals in the committee. So support us at the First Amendment Fund. Go to conservative.org to donate. We'd love your help, and thank you. Thank you for fighting for these kids and for America. And so thank you all for watching. I know he's like one of our most popular guests, and apparently he has a show. We're going to learn more about it at some point. And
I'll come on another time, and we can
I will have him
talk about
back on. Thank you all for watching. God bless and good night.